Keefe D has been arrested for the involvement in Tupac's murder. The biggest murder of a celebrity in modern times will finally be solved officially. We all know who did it in real life. Tupac was shot after a Mike Tyson fight in September 1996. There was a fight involving Orlando Anderson, a Los Angeles Crip, over a death row chain. The story was basically that a blood named Trayvon Lane was apparently jumped, and depending on who you speak to, Trayvon's death row chain was taken, or the Crips attempted to take his chain. Orlando Anderson apparently was one of them that was part of that altercation. According to the stories over the years, Trayvon goes to his death row crew, or he might have gone to Tupac, depending on who you ask again, and said, hey, there's the guy that robbed me of my chain, or tried to rob me of my chain. That's when you see on the footage on Las Vegas, Tupac dash across, and he just goes towards Orlando Anderson and then punches him in the face, and the whole death row crew then jump in and just give him a good old beating. And Orlando Anderson got beat up pretty good. His shoulder was all busted, apparently, according to Keefe D. But after the fight with Orlando Anderson, Suge, Tupac, and the whole death row crew were gonna go to 662, which was Suge Knight's nightclub. So they went and changed, got into their outfits for the club, and they were on their way there. Meanwhile, Orlando Anderson had met his uncle Keefe D and the rest of the homies and told them what happened. And they got in the car, locked and loaded, looking for Tupac to get revenge. But long story short, they do find Tupac. Several shots later, Tupac is shot. Suge Knight is shot in the head but survives. But Tupac didn't survive his injuries, and he later died on September 13th, 1996. Now this case ended up being a cold case for decades, basically. Even though there was always that word on the street that Orlando Anderson was the shooter, there was never enough evidence to actually prosecute him while he was alive, because he ended up dying in 1998. So it ended up just being a cold case. Then comes Keefe D. Keefe D was a shot caller for the Crips, and he was selling drugs. He got caught up and arrested for the drug offenses. But while being interrogated, the officers offered him what's called a proffer agreement, which is basically, if you give the investigators some real good information, then you'll basically get pardoned. Your criminal charges will go away for the drugs. Keefe D then goes and confesses about the Tupac murder, because already the police kind of knew Keefe D was somewhat involved in the murders. That's why they kind of offered him, yo, tell us the details of that and we'll let your drug charges disappear. So Keefe D goes and confesses that his nephew Orlando Anderson was the shooter, and he even named where everybody was sitting in the car. He went into a lot of details about the crime. And this was back in 2015 or 16 is when he confessed to the investigators. But then after this, around 2018-19, Keefe D started relaying the information about the shooting on social media. By this point, he'd already written a book about the whole events. And of course it would have made noise at the time, but once you put your face on camera and start explaining it to people who don't really read aren't really paying attention to that book, but they definitely get on YouTube and watch these interviews. So the first place he went on was DJ Vlad. Vlad was basically asking him questions about things he put in the book, but Keefe D was very tight-lipped about all the details. He pretty much would just say, yo, get the book and you can know what happened. But over the years, he's got a bit more comfortable with the camera, and he's been on different platforms like Art of Dialogue and gone into great detail about who was sitting where, what happened, and pretty much every single minute detail of the events of the Tupac shooting. So there you have an individual, the only surviving individual who was in the vehicle that shot at Tupac and Suge Knight, going on platforms for years, about 2 or 3 years, talking about how he was involved, without saying he's the actual shooter, but saying he's involved with the murder of the legendary Tupac. It was also a matter of weeks ago that the Las Vegas police got a warrant to search Keefe D's house. I mean, obviously he's not going to have the gun or the bullets or any real physical evidence from 1996 in his house, but they confiscated a lot of things such as his computer and a lot of files in his home. But a recent interview with Chris Carroll, the guy that had the last conversation with Tupac before he died, believes that Las Vegas police won't offer Keefe D a deal at all, and he doesn't imagine Keefe D will plead guilty, so it's most likely that it will probably go to trial, which makes it very, very tasty, because if Keefe D is going to fight this in trial, he's going to fight tooth and nail, bring out every card he can to beat this case. One of the things that people are believing that he'll mention is P. Diddy's supposed involvement, because apparently Diddy, Puffy at the time, offered Keefe D and the Southside Crips $1 million to kill Tupac and Suge Knight. There was even a money transfer, but a Keefe D associate would end up taking the money and running off with it. It would just so happen though that Tupac would assault Keefe D's nephew, and then they went and took out revenge anyway. So it really wasn't Puffy's money that really paid for it, but I can see how that may be brought in. I don't believe it will. I don't believe Puffy will be brought into this, but it would be very interesting if he is. A lot of people are also speculating that Puffy has preempted this, and that's why he's changed his name to Love, and the fact that he's giving publishing back to some of his bad boy artists, which people felt that was really out of nowhere, and it's very unheard of in the music business anyway. But the Las Vegas PD had a press conference announcing the arrest of Keefe D and said that this is only the start of the proceedings, so we should expect a lot more in the near future. And for those who don't quite understand, even though Keefe D hasn't admitted that he is the actual shooter, he was in the car, part of an actual crime, and obviously the crime is murder. In most states, even if you're not the trigger man, you're in the car, so you're just as guilty as the shooter. So basically he's facing the murder trial, whether he did it or not. And let's not forget, eyewitnesses said it was a big arm that came out of the car and done the shooting, and Orlando Anderson was a very slim guy, and plus apparently he bust his shoulder in the altercation with Tupac and Death Row. So for him to shoot so accurately and lean over to shoot as well, because he wasn't in the left side of the car to shoot, so he had to lean over and shoot, it seems a bit unlikely. But what do you think about the developments in the Tupac murder investigation? Personally, I think Keefe D was embarrassing the law enforcement agencies, and that's why they're taking action, because he's been speaking like this for years, bragging that he's got away with murder. I feel like they're just taking action for that wrong reason. Do you think this will go to trial? Do you think Keefe D is the actual shooter? And do you think they'll bring Suge Knight into this? He is pretty much the only other person who can ID who shot at them. But leave a comment below, people. Like, subscribe, hit that notification bell. It's Fresh Hip Hop Opinion. Peace and love.